All right, I don't have the agenda pulled up in front of me.
I can pull that up.
Should I give an update on our meetings the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And feel free to add anything, but so my update is we met with Julie Moore. Oh, sorry, we should probably do welcome and introductions. Is anybody, and then any public comments? Does everybody know each other? Is anybody here from the public?
Jim Carrier's on. He's been on a couple of calls, but he is from the public.
Yes, and I'm actually a reporter as much as anything, so watch what you say. No, I mean, I'm following this issue for a piece or two that I made. So
Great, well, thanks for joining us, Jim. We're happy to have you. Anybody else? I see Eric's on. Thanks, Eric's, for joining us.
Sure thing.
I think, is that the only people from the public?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just jump right into the kind of the chair update. And then I guess we can't do the action items, but our big update is really the Basin, or not our Basin program, but our action plan update. We've had some pretty interesting, I think very thought-provoking, good meetings with Secretary Moore and Secretary Tebbetts. Secretary Tebbetts' meeting was this morning and Secretary Moore's meeting was last Wednesday. The one with Secretary Moore was Hillary and I who attended with Katie. And then with Secretary Tebbetts, it was Karina, myself, and Hillary who attended that meeting. Really, essentially, we just gave them a draft of a current draft of the action plan that we're putting together, asking, just trying to get feedback on like where we might align, what things they're thinking about for this legislative session, how we're thinking about this, who we are, really also like kind of an opportunity to connect with them and just do introductions and let them know who the CAC is, outline what we do and what we don't do. We're not a policymaking board, but that we do collect information throughout the year, and that we then put together an action plan. That is the big outcome of the Citizens Advisory Committee, is that action plan that we present annually to the legislature and the governor's office. I think today's meeting, there was actually quite a few, and I got there a little bit late after introductions, the gentleman sitting next to Secretary Tebbetts, is that the deputy secretary of ag or the policy?
No, I need to double check what his official title is. That was Steve Collier. Let me give me 1 second.
You said legal counsel.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Hillary.
Okay. There's Hillary. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No, it was great. Thanks for being here. I feel like he really knew his stuff and was really probably the person that we should have been, that it was good that he was in the room. I think some like insight into the action plan. I think overall both like the direction that we're going in. I think Secretary Moore and Secretary Tebbetts. I think one of my, in one of the enlightening things, insightful, is nobody really knows or Secretary Tebbetts says he doesn't know what regenerative ag means, and it means different things to different people. One of the terms that came out today in that meeting was precision ag, which is different than regenerative ag, but could be something that we talk about maybe in the action plan and talk about the need for that. The other thing is Laura DePietro was there today and she shared a new name for the grass waterways program that they have. And that seems like something that they're going to be investing in a little bit more, and wanting farmers to take advantage of, which will help with erosion and soil and loss of soil from farmland. The other thing that came up for me was, the need to incentivize farmers to farm, right? There's like a big loss of farmland. I think 11% of farmland since 2011 or something, when they did like a massive USDA survey. But really how do we incentivize farmers to farm? And when they talk about farmers, they talk about all farmers. Anything else, Hillary or Karina or Katie, that you're thinking of that I'm missed or that we should summarize here for everybody? I do not have my notes in front of me, so I apologize if I have not.
No, that I jumped in late, so my apologies for that. But what I heard sounded good, and I agree. The overprescribed and underfunded was definitely a theme throughout. And, they gave us the new program for the grass waterways was seeding and filter strip program. There was the Ag Environmental Management Program. There was the Northeast Dairy Innovation Center and the Capital Equipment Investment Program. But it sounds like all of those programs are oversubscribed and underfunded.
Working Lands is the other one. Working Lands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was interesting to hear. And
They are
yeah,
one of the other things I heard, they are worried that I don't know if worry is the right word, but the legislative body does not seem to know anything or understand farming. And so there's a little bit of concern there about what their knowledge is or how much they understand the farm economy in our state. And so I thought that was another interesting kind of piece that was pulled out. Hillary, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and those grant programs that everybody was just talking about were like, in addition to the grant programs that we initially started talking about, which had the $43 million worth of requests for $2.1 million worth of funding, which were the it was like maple meat and farm diversification. So it might be interesting to actually collect all those numbers, like what each program had for funds and what what were the applications in terms of need out there.
Yeah,
It's
it
just
also
interesting to me that, that like when I'm trying to work with the QUISP, and there's so much funding there for clean water projects, and then it feels like there's this gap where farms are trying to be innovative and there's not, that funding source is more taxed or more, just more oversubscribed. I guess we're using that word.
What was unclear to me, Hillary, was like how much of these programs are federally funded or subsidized and how much is state. Like there wasn't a clear, and I don't work in those programs, so that's probably part of it.
Right. And like the SEEP program is capital dollars, which might be federal. And then some of it is state dollars, probably from the Clean Water Fund, depending on the program.
Yeah, and sorry, I want to kind of pivot back to the meeting with Julie last week with Secretary Moore. I was unfortunately in a terrible cell reception site, so I did not have great connection, but Hillary and Katie really did a great job holding that meeting. Hillary, do you want to give kind of a summary of that one?
Yeah, I've got all my notes, but I think they're at the office. It was funny.
I have my notes from that meeting in the chat. They're not, and Gianna
okay.
took those notes, which was great. So feel free you should be able to access that. And Karina, I'll share it again because you joined after I shared that. So you can scroll through there. They have not been cleaned up yet, so don't expect the same caliber as the meeting summaries.
I guess just it felt like, that Julian, I think it was Jason's the commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. That they had gone through the plan and that they had some suggestions in the sections, the sections where we align with them. And they had some comments, like in the AIS section, they talked about how it's really hard, it's really challenging to have another fee program and to run something like the different requests we make, like for new boat licensing for non-motorized boats that would help pay for, greeters or wash stations or any of that sort of education. But that there's an existing program that's like a wildlife sticker that hunters will purchase sometimes, like you buy it probably in the same place that you would buy your fishing license. And that if we could get the word out about that, that's the funding that they use to, maintain the boat launches. And where if they had extra funding, they might be more interested in using that to open a new access point in South Lake, for example. So I thought that was something I didn't actually know about, and it would be really easy to
Hillary,
publicize.
is that the habitat stamp you're referring to?
Yes, the habitat stamp.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I just wanted to make sure.
Sorry, I have to let my dog out. This is, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I feel like just referencing the habitat stamp in the action plan, or even just in our.
Yeah, that would be, promoting that would be great. And then she
Okay.
talked about other grant programs where they are moving some funding forward, but there's always a need for more funds. So, and those are, I'm not looking at the notes right now, but I'm sure Katie's got those captured in the notes. We had made specific reference to the like healthy homes, which is the one that'll pay for septic, especially around lakes. And I guess there's some other sources too that are fairly new, that may be temporary because of ARPA, but they're other things we could call out, I guess. Let's see. Oh yeah, like emergency response loans for flood events was one that she said that they're working on. And then their new regulatory positions, for example, they have funding for 11 new positions. They were granted 15 positions, but funding came through for 11. That one's for the act last year about the flood resilience and riparian buffers. And those will be regulatory positions, and they'll be working on basically statewide zoning. And then maybe some legal changes in Vermont laws to help make it so we could reduce chloride use without as much threat of lawsuits to the private sector. I don't know. Those are kind of the things that really stuck out to me, but there's it was an hour-long conversation. Quite a bit, it was pretty dense. Quite a bit was actually covered.
Yeah, another thing that came up that we've talked about before was the VOREC grant program, and Secretary Moore did note that they'll be looking for more money to support that this upcoming year, which is a little bit different than what we had heard in the presentation. So it was good to get that update.
And Katie, once you have your notes, or I could go in now, I was thinking I have the notes for both meetings. I could go in and just add or comment on things if that's helpful. I assume you have pretty thorough notes because I've seen your notes and they're always great. But
I mean, I think overall, both meetings were great. I know that Secretary Teppett's office was kind of grateful. I feel like they were really appreciative that we came to meet with them today, and hopefully we can just continue that practice. There's one other thing that, I think the framing of our document, the action plan, with really being heavy on flood resilience, I think resonated really well with both agencies as well. One last comment about our meeting with Julie. I did ask about the changes that the EPA is requesting of making ANR responsible for farm ag pollution. She didn't have any real big updates at this point in terms of what their plan is going to be to address that. That they'll probably propose a phased approach was my understanding, but that there wasn't anything yet. They haven't designed anything yet, or she wasn't ready to share anything yet, I guess I would say.
Was there any comment about how they had been working with, like, is it going well with them and ag on that transition?
I didn't even get a sense that they had met, and we didn't ask Ag about it today. We probably could have, and I might have if I had been in the room. I don't know if you guys talked about it before or after. I
It
was on
didn't come up.
Zoom. It didn't
I've
come
talked
up
about it
today.
with people at Ag, but I probably shouldn't put it on, you know,
Unofficially.
was not officially. And I kind of wondered if that's why they had counsel in the room a little bit. I was kind of curious about why they had their legal counsel there today. And then also Emily Bird joined us from DEC. So that was kind of interesting to me too. I wasn't sure about that dynamic, like what people were expecting we were going to say.
Oh, I think Emily Bird was there for as Sarah Coleman, because Sarah had an emergency, is what she said before you got on, Hill.
Okay.
So
I just
yeah,
wasn't
and
sure that
she was at the
Sarah
meeting with
was
Jewel
always
too.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah. Sarah had a family emergency, so couldn't be there.
Okay. Yeah, I
But
guess I
why?
expected her at DEC, but
Yeah, I'm curious why, like, yeah, because she's just a different agency, why DEC would send someone to Ag.
Yeah, I
Because of
asked.
staff.
Yeah, when we were scheduling it, I checked in with Sarah to see if anyone else should be invited on that call, and she wanted to be on it, just because she helps staff the CAC. But I don't think it hindered the discussion too much to have someone else from a different agency on today, but we weren't talking about anything too inflammatory.
well, exactly. That's why I wondered what they thought we were going to talk about. But of course, we were talking about the normal things we talk about, which are not too inflammatory.
Just a couple of other updates. So as the chair of the CAC, I attend the executive and steering committee meetings of the Lake Champlain Basin program. I also this year had the honor of going to the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership meeting in Saint-Jean, Quebec. Well, one of the things that I'll go back. So our steering committee meeting our steering committee meeting was in Lake George. Executive committee meeting was in Lake George at the YMCA there, right? That was the
Both
whole
were.
steering
Yep.
committee of the Basin program.
Yep.
I had never been there. It was really cool. I wish I could have gone over the night before, but I ended up like getting up early the morning of and heading over. There was a really excellent, they're doing some really excellent work around septic systems around Lake George. And just some real surprises with what they've discovered or uncovered in terms of within, I think, 50 feet. They basically have done an assessment of camps 50 feet from the lakeshore. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. And about 50% of them have a fail rate right now. And they are offering incentive and funding to be able to help people fix them. But I think I guess the program seemed to have been well received, so there wasn't a lot of like pushback on doing this assessment and process. But that there was a much higher fail rate than they anticipated around Lake George, which is such a pristine lake. So, it just begets kind of questions. If you start wondering like, oh, it's been a really long time that Vermont's looked into this issue. And I don't even know if we've ever done a comprehensive study around it or provided funding unless you're low income to people to fix the issues that they might have. So I thought that was a really interesting presentation. We haven't seen that at the CAC yet, have we, Katie?
Not the
They're
Vermont
Lake George.
CAC. They've
No.
presented twice to the New York CAC, so we can definitely arrange that if the committee's interested. I just put the presentation they shared with the New York CAC in the chat.
Yeah, great.
Did they also present at that like Vermont Water Quality Conference a couple of years ago?
Right. Did they present the results at that one?
I feel like I went to that and it was very informative and telling of Lake George, but I don't know if they had the results yet. It might have been earlier on in the study.
Yeah, I think they're just a year or two into this.
Also, it might be new.
This might be a different one. Maybe they were
Yeah.
setting it up, Karina, when you met with them or when they came to the water
Yeah,
quality
maybe,
conference.
or maybe it was like a pre-study. But no, that sounds, I've heard about it, so I'm trying to remember where I've heard about it, but it sounds really like something we should definitely have.
Well, yeah, and then Sorry, did somebody have anything to say? Go ahead, Lori. Did you unmute?
I just wanted to note that I think Mark brought that up at our last meeting because he had been at that
That's right, he came.
presentation and, you know, put it on the radar screen for us for the action plan and also moving forward with it, incorporating that in some way.
I think that's a great idea. I think we should have them come and present kind of how they set it up, because
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, that would be the most interesting piece for us, I think. And then also kind of like what the results are. So Katie, maybe we could work on getting that after the action plan's kind of done. If anybody doesn't know, it's the 250th anniversary of the American, am I getting that right? I don't even, but it was the American Revolution.
The semi-quincentennial, that's correct.
Also, like Vermont's 250th anniversary is coming up too. So there's a lot of 250s going around. But the American Revolution. So there's a lot of like work right now being done on kind of getting some displays and cultural heritage stuff done around that. So just something to note. And I think that's it, kind of like from a steering executive committee note. Yeah. I think that's it.
Well, we'll pass it over to Eric then, and then we can return to our vote after that.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Katie. So yeah, Katie asked me to just come in, stop in and share a few updates on Basin program activities with you all. So thanks for making a little time on your agenda for me. Just a few things. As you all know, we published our new State of the Lake report in June. Sue Hagar tells me that we have now distributed a little over 5,000 hard copies since we published the report on, I think it was June 5th. So that's pretty good. We had 9,000 printed, so we've already distributed more than half of what we had printed. And those have been going to groups across the basin. And staff have participated in continue to participate in a lot of media interviews driven by the content in that report. Our boat launch stewards, we had 23 boat launch stewards this season. They were deployed to public launches on the lake over the summer. We're down to 1 week left in that season. And I believe the last of the stewards will turn their gear in at the end of this week or maybe early next week. Meg or Lauren can connect in to a future meeting and share a report out to you on how this season went. But as far as I've heard, there have not been any new invasive species reported in the lake. There's a few close calls, as there unfortunately often are at the launches, but the stewards did pick them up and were able to remove or decontaminate the boats and trailers as they were found. As Denise mentioned, we hosted the 2024 CVNHP Heritage Summit. That was up in St. Jean-sur-Richelieu. That was just a week ago? I guess it was last weekend, Sunday and Monday. A couple of you were there. We checked out McGill University's Galt Nature Reserve at Mont Saint-Hilaire, which is a research facility with about 2,500 acres or so of land in which they have a number of different experiments that are happening, many of which are looking at the impacts of climate change on water quality, and one in particular looking at climate change on cyanobacteria blooms. We then stopped by Fort St. Jean Museum in St. Jean-sur-Richelieu, which that museum interprets the very rich military history of that area, dating back more than 400 years. And then on Monday, the summit itself focused on sharing out work happening in Cabin, the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network, as well as information about what is or what will be happening in Vermont, New York, and in Quebec to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, which that commemoration will begin next year across the Champlain Valley and run for the next 3 years, interpreting the war as it happened throughout the Champlain Valley. Our funding agreements are now in place with EPA and National Park Service for our new FY24 funding. We're waiting on the Great Lakes Fishery Commission to finalize that agreement. But in total, the new FY24 funding agreements routed through new EPIC and the Basin program sum to almost $21 million. Much of that is 19 million of that is through the EPA. There's our Section 120 base funding or through our bill agreement, infrastructure agreement. The rest will have about a little over 1.6 million through the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and then our what is appears to be our usual 500,000 for the National Park Service for the heritage area. Tomorrow, the Basin Program's Executive Committee meets. One of the key agenda items will be an informational presentation from on Vermont conservation design. That'll be from with Jens Hilke and Bob Zano from Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. They'll be reviewing the Vermont Biofinder website, and here I can drop a link into that website for you. Might be interesting for you all to hear about this in your own meeting at some point. There you go. So if you're not familiar with it, the conservation design is a prioritization tool that the state uses to identify lands and waters that are most important for maintaining an ecologically functional landscape. They have a really cool story map on their website that just kind of provides an overview of how the program works. I, in my free time, volunteer with my town's Conservation Commission in Williston, and we worked with Jens a few years ago to use this approach to identify areas of Williston for conservation priority. It worked really well, and we were able to finalize a map in town in Williston that we use on the Conservation Commission as a tool to prioritize parcels for our conservation funds that we have in Williston. If you want to connect into the meeting tomorrow and learn more about it, you're more than welcome to. They'll be on the agenda. They are on the agenda at 10:30. Or again, I'm sure that Jens and Bob would be happy to provide a similar presentation to this group at a future meeting. They are interested in sharing out how to use the tool, but also interested in feedback from consumers regarding how to improve it and make it more useful. The other significant agenda item for tomorrow's executive committee meeting will be discussion and review of proposals for our new land acquisition grant program, which is supported with bill funding or infrastructure funding. And then the last thing I have for you is on December 5th, Corey Miller from our team and several partner organizations, including Karina with VNRC, I believe, are hosting a workshop that's focused on reconnecting waterways. That's designed for project managers, engineers, and construction contractors who are interested in working on dam removal or culvert replacement projects. That's largely focused on, as I understand it, on Vermont permitting, open to anyone from the basin. And I think if I remember correctly, the Connecticut River Conservancy is kicking in some funding to make it available to folks outside in Vermont outside of the Champlain Basin. And then I believe Corey's plan is to hold a similar type of workshop in New York next year that'll focus on New York permitting. That's what I had.
That was a good summary, Eric.
The website I just found 5 minutes ago worked really well for that. Thanks, Karina.
And I think New York's invited, Corey said, to this one, so fully invited to engage, but not specific to their region.
Yep. And I just dropped a link to in the chat to that workshop. It is, as I mentioned, it is free, but registration is required, so we can make sure there's enough seats and food and all that for participants. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Any
Hang
questions?
on, I'm muted. Should we do a vote?
Yeah, we can vote on the
Thanks, Eric.
the meeting
The minutes from last month.
which I may not have corrected in the agenda. I put July 8th, should have been September 10th. Apologies.
That's just to ensure that we're reading them, Katie. We understand. Well, with that correction, I'll move that they be accepted.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
I'm happy to second.
Perfect. All those in favor or any further discussion? I guess would be the first question. All right, no further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Do we have any other business, official business?
Not up top.
Okay. So I think our next thing, is it the action plan, Katie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and Eric, feel free to hop off so you're not watching us live edit a document.
It's
Oh,
really
fun.
fun.
Come on, Eric.
I will
It's really
take your advice. Thank you, Katie, and good luck to you all with that next task. Have a good evening.
Thanks for the update, Eric.
Yep,
Appreciate
no
it.
problem.
Thanks. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, I think we've done a lot of work. Like, this has been a really engaged group of people. And everybody's weighed in and done a lot of work over the last couple of months on this document and kind of really rethinking it. The beauty is, in our desire to be briefer, we may have made it longer. So we're contemplating just accepting the fact that it might be a 4-page document and being okay with that and not trying to like get ourselves into this like, oh, it's got to be 2 pages. It's been 2 pages. Like, you know, why, right? So if it makes more sense for us to make sure that we're capturing all of our thoughts and that it's a really good document, then just keep it as a 4-page with some graphics. I don't know, Katie, do you want to pull it up and maybe people could just weigh in on that idea of it being a little bit longer this year? Lori, did you unmute?
Yeah, I did. I know we're going to go through it, but just in the interest of moving this along, I'm personally fine with it being a little longer. I don't think we need to, because I think both Andrew and I at the last meeting noted that if we're going for 2 pages, given the content of this, we're going to have supplementary information anyway. And to me, it seems a lot cleaner to put it in one document as best we can. We may still need supporting information, but I personally wouldn't obsess to, over 2 or 4. I think let the content drive that. Yeah, we want to, edit ourselves well and be succinct. But avoid repetition, but I think the content should drive this and content and clarity.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or strong feelings about it being 4 pages as opposed to 2?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think with 4 pages, you can have an 11 by 17 folded over. It's still a single document, and it could do pretty good things with graphics and make it look good. So I'd be supportive.
Yeah, I feel like since we started this process earlier too, we have so many more talking points for each section, and it's sort of a shame to lose those entirely and just have people need to rely on their memories for some of those talking points. So that would lend toward, again, I like the idea of following the document and where it leads us.
Do you want to walk us through it, Katie? If no one else has any other thoughts. Oh, Karina unmuted. Karina, did you have something to add?
No, I agree. I think I like having just a little more. This document has more meat in it than our last year's one, which is helpful.
So there's this document that's on the screen right now, and then I put the link in the chat. This has all of the comments still on the side, which will be helpful when we're writing out the talking points. There is a cleaner version if you're getting overwhelmed by all of the comments and highlights that we shared with the secretaries. So I'll just put that in the chat also if you want to see what that looks like. In that other version, the primary difference is obviously it doesn't have this proposed timeline stuff in it. And I also didn't include the flood impact statistics in that one. As I was looking back at this, after we've drafted some things, I'm not sure that the 2023 compared to 2024 statistics are like telling the most compelling story to who will be our audience. So, we can keep these in, especially if it's going to be a longer document, but just something to consider. And if we need to find alternate data to include in this, we can look for that.
I mean, yeah, is the comparison that interesting to legislators, or was that just, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, Breck's comment had been like that this isn't really like what makes the policy discussions go is the socioeconomic impacts and less these kinds of impacts. And especially, I don't know, I don't think like the Pequannoski River flow was about 75% of the flow. And like, I don't think that's going to speak to legislators personally, unless they're really into that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more important point is that there was another year of floods, another year that this is becoming a regular thing. So I think that's the key point.
Yeah, and we have that reflected in this section here.
I feel like too, that data just showed that you had to distill it out, that the floods were variable and that they, they were not like they occurred in different places in both of those summers. So they're unpredictable. That's what I'm trying to say. Variable and unpredictable.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway. I don't know that you need to, right? Yeah.
So do we think we can just say variable and unpredictable and get rid of this? Great.
Yeah.
Good job, everyone.
Woo!
Got a whole lot of text out of there.
Saving space.
I feel like
More
maybe getting some of
pictures.
that actual like pounds or kilograms of phosphorus delivered in those events from Matt Vaughn would be good talking points.
Like a total P load because of the two storms or from the two storms.
Right. I mean, we're spending a lot of money trying to clean up Lake Champlain, and these storms dump so much phosphorus. And so we're having to rethink how we, our infrastructure and how we look at these projects and streams. And
Julie brought up a good point during that meeting about how all the infrastructure, it's so easy. I think, was it Julie that shared, like, there's a road crew that has a 3-foot culvert, but they really need to put an 8-foot culvert in. But the money difference is so much more.
right.
But the reality is if they put that 3-foot culvert in, the road's gonna wash, right? Like, so it's just kind of like this prevention that we need to do now. And how do we manage that? So
Those two examples tie in well together also.
right.
So nothing in this intro has changed since we last had our editing session. And nothing in the priorities either. Though I did have a question. So Andrew, since you're our resident expert on the climate action plan, you know the most about this. Or I don't want to assume, I'm sure other people know about the climate action plan too, but you have been a vocal advocate for including this in the action plan. We did mention it in our action plan last year and the year before. but we haven't received many presentations or any presentations on like the content or areas of alignment of the action plan and resilience implementation strategy. So I just wanted to check in about how folks were feeling about including this sentence about our action plan aligns with the climate action plan and resilience implementation strategies focus on actions that build existing programs and maximize co-benefits. If folks know more about that and can confirm that that's a true sentence, I think that would be fine to keep in, but I just wanted to sort of get a temperature check on that.
That's a really good point, Katie. And I had underlined resilience implementation strategy because from reading this, it's not clear if that is part of the action plan or what is the resilience implementation strategy.
Resilience implementation strategy in the climate action plan?
Is that a separate thing? Or
It
Yeah,
is.
so
Yeah, Andrew, thanks.
I mean, I think to answer your first question, yeah, I think it's really important that and accurate to say that we're aligning our work with the climate action plan and the co-benefits of many of the actions in there for things like water quality. I think that makes good sense. The resilience implementation strategy is separate from the climate action plan. It's actually came out of the governor's office in response to the flooding. And I'm less sure what its status is, but it is not part of the climate action plan. And I don't think it's formally linked to the climate action plan. So I think we would want to check with somebody in the governor's office or their staff to see what the status is before we include that in this document. It doesn't, it may have just been something that, you know, there was a press release on and it hasn't gone very far. So I'm not quite sure who we would check with, but I think that would be worth doing. And if it does, if it's kind of just static and not really moving forward, maybe we don't include it.
I guess if I fully support referencing the action plan and think we should take the opportunity to get someone in from the climate action plan. I mean, I know Andrew, you're here, so maybe a presentation from you or someone else. That would be good. We should learn more about what's going on over there.
Yeah, I would agree. I would recommend someone from the climate action office just because they'll have the big picture of what's going on.
Yeah, both Sarah and I had reached out and were unsuccessful in that, so we can keep trying.
I mean, I just Googled it. Sorry. It said that they were going to come up with a resilience implementation strategy initiative in July. Did that happen?
I did attend, like, I think there was a couple public meetings in July. One was over Zoom, but I don't know what happened as a result of those meetings.
I can ask people in my office at VCRD and there's so many acronyms. What's his name? Energy Action Network, although I think that's more related to energy than it is to climate change, but I can find out. But I just put the link on the press release that they came up with.
And I believe Mike Pichek was presenting. He was sort of the lead on it, as I remember.
Yeah, I think that's right. That sort of tells you what its focus is, maybe, is on resilience of communities to future flooding and the economic parts of that.
I just don't know that we know enough about it to put it in there right now.
I would agree with that.
So I think we can take it out, right? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
And then if we get more information, then we can look at it.
And folks still feel good about the phrasing of these priorities?
They look good to me. I am noticing Allison's really thoughtful remarks on the side. I hadn't read those yet. I know she had to hop off. I don't know. Can you scroll down just a little bit?
I wonder if in the third bullet, when we talk about prioritizing land use and sustainable development to reduce water quality impacts, if we should add anything about flooding there, or if we have it above, so we don't need it there.
I think that was the thought process, was to try to keep all of that lumped in one section.
Separate, okay.
One thing I had on the last bullet for public access, wondering if we wanted to include tributaries. So access to Lake Champlain and its tributaries for all communities. Just thinking about that opens it up to river access as well.
Right.
So one change in this section that I've made following the meeting with the secretaries, Julie, before we had this, we named 3 different DEC programs, and she did not think the legislature was going to be familiar with all of those different programs or know that they were all DEC programs. So she just suggested putting just DEC programs instead of naming them all individually, which I think is a little bit cleaner also.
The second
That's fine.
sentence, that first paragraph, I mean, do we really want to go back all the way to 2011? Because I think what we're trying to say here, the point across, is that what's happened the last 2 years doesn't appear to be unique. It's kind of the new normal and is more important of what's happened this year and last year.
Yeah.
And the significance of frequency. I mean, we all thought last year was kind of an anomaly outlier, and of course, that's not been the case as of July.
Yeah, I think part of the rationale for the 2011 was there was this Digger article that from earlier this year that pulled from data from 2011. So I was just being consistent with another resource that was out there in case folks had come across that, but I don't think we have to go that far back.
Yep. But I think what's happening, I think if you go back to the period of time, there weren't this extent of changes. I mean, obviously we had Hurricane Irene, but I think from 2011, you know, the following 10 years, we didn't see those kind of extensive, because I do a lot of weather analysis and data for all these CSO communities, and you know, things are dry. We didn't see a whole lot of change after. It's really more so the last couple of years that I think we need to think differently moving forward. But it's
I mean, I like what you did there, Katie, but again, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just stating the frequency of severe weather disasters in Vermont has increased over the past decade.
I feel like the detail is helpful in we could stress more just how amplified the 23 and 24 storms were. But I feel like it's a nice progression, just showing just how hard FEMA. I didn't realize there's 22 FEMA. That's a lot.
Major FEMA declared extreme
Mhm.
weather disasters. I don't know what the difference is. Is there like minor FEMA disaster? Weather disasters? Like what's the threshold for being a major FEMA declared extreme weather disaster?
That makes me think that we should have FEMA come.
We should totally have FEMA come.
Yeah, I would not recommend. They have not been very helpful in some cases with some of this. I mean, I think the declaration is by county and there's gotta be a certain dollar amount of damage before it's declared.
But it would be helpful to learn from them what they need.
Yeah, the problem is no consistency. I mean, I'm
Or
involved in a
maybe-
bunch of these projects and the PAs change every couple of weeks. I mean, some of these communities that are dealing with flood issues from over a year ago have been through 5 or 6 different FEMA reps, and I don't even know who you would ask. So it's
And we
been a
have-
struggle.
Sorry, did we have Vermont Emergency Management last year, Katie? I think we did.
Yeah.
Stephanie.
I was just thinking if we wanted to say something about like as the frequency and severity of flooding increases or something, you could put that in front of, swift action investments are needed to ensure. Like if we're trying to really highlight the change that's happening now.
I know that then an ANR, I think Pat Moulton's like the flood recovery, long-term flood recovery person for the Winooski. They're doing a flood basin plan. So it's not really a water quality basin plan, it's more looking at the flood resiliency opportunities along the Winooski River. I'm just wondering if that would also be maybe somebody that we would want to have come and speak. There's also like a Southeast Vermont is doing some after flood, and FEMA is actually hosting them, which we thought was interesting. Some after flood kind of action planning, long-term action planning work. I don't know if you've heard about that, Wayne. I know they had a meeting last week. I couldn't attend it, but I know that was happening also last week. I'm happy to reach out and get more information and see if that's something we want to hear about.
They have some sub-consultants that are, involved in more, they're called the complex projects, but I don't know if they'd be able to talk to the broad kind of little bit of everything. It's probably too specific for what we're looking at here.
Well, thank you.
Apologies, folks. I have to go off line for a moment to deal with an issue. So I missed the question. So what are we trying to deliberate on here?
We're deliberating on, do we want to include the since 2011, the Lake Champlain has impacted. So are we going too far back by saying 2011? Is that data kind of irrelevant? It relates to an article that Katie is referencing in Digger. I think you could get rid of it and save some room, but that's me.
That's fine.
I think Karina was saying to keep it.
No, I'm fine. I mean,
We can
I
have
like
that as a talking point.
I do.
Yeah,
I think we want some number of storms. I mean, I think we do want to figure in there whether we have to go back to 2011. I don't know, but we have, a significant number of federally declared disasters in just the last few years. And certainly it was historic that on the anniversary of the 2023 floods, we got hit with another 500-year storm, then.
We could put it in a graphic. It doesn't have to be in the actual text.
Mhm.
that will take up more space.
Yeah.
But we've
Yeah,
got
but it's
some
I-
room.
we've got so much room now, Karina, because we're going 4 pages, so it doesn't matter.
I feel like we only have a couple of statistics in there too, so it like doesn't hurt to have it in. I don't know.
I think it might be a nice caption under a sad photo.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
Katie.
we can just
Yeah.
leave
It's
it like
it's a
that.
caption or its own graph. I like that.
Okay. No, not in there. We'll pretend this isn't here right now, but it'll be somewhere else in the document. Adjacent. Thoughts on this riparian and floodplain restoration subsection.
Like that one.
In the next one, aquatic connectivity for resilience, this is the only one of these subsections that doesn't have a real specific, I mean, I guess the sentence, it is a single sentence as opposed to the other sections being multiple sentences. So the ask and the need is kind of right up top. Restoration, blah, blah, blah is necessary, but it doesn't have the same, like the CAC asks or the state must. So I don't know how folks feel about that slight shift in format, or if they have an idea on a more specific ask here.
This is the
I-
only place, sorry, is this the only place we mention AIS?
No.
It's down at the bottom too, right?
Yeah.
This is more about,
That's aquatic organism passage.
oh, okay, it's different.
Yeah,
Okay.
the invasive species is further down.
Oh, so this is, okay. So this is about fish being able to access their breeding grounds and things like that. Okay,
Mhm.
sorry.
feel like-
I highlighted this section and I can work on it a little more. I think an ask would be good. I also thought we should like add a little bit more detail related to fish wanting to access cold water refugia and the importance of riparian buffers. So like those were my notes, but I don't have language at this point. But the ask could be, well, there could be a lot of asks, but to continue to support funding and research related to river reconnection.
Sorry, I have chaos here. I just got home seconds before jumping on this call, so I have cats and dogs needing things and interacting poorly. So in that sentence too, we have like, we give more detail about things, like there's verbs included except with erosion and nutrient loading. So maybe we could, you know, minimize or decrease or some verb we haven't
Yeah.
used yet, and then say erosion and nutrient loading in the same like comma section.
Yeah, I think these three are supposed to be like a chunk. It
So
does
then we
not
might need some
necessarily read like
semicolons.
that. Yeah. We can do that. Oh, my mouse remote. All right, I'll keep scrolling us down.
I guess, do we need an ask there too? Like, especially once maybe we've looked at the funding allocations and then how oversubscribed each grant was, like maybe there's something that got the least, you know, like farm diversification only got like $250,000, but the ask was millions and millions of dollars. So maybe something, you know, we have a request that's like increased funding and then a focus on something that we, one of the programs we like, or.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the intent of this additional state and federal support is needed. But if that's not strong enough, we can work on that. And I think part of the conversation today, Steve was saying that they put their requests in, they don't know what they're going to be advocating for yet until December probably. So might want to leave it broader at this point and then add in those more specific requests during the presentations, but open to everyone's
I think once we have those gaps, right, from those programs and how much is requested and how much we're actually able to fund, I think that'll be important.
Yeah, and we have some of that with the meat, maple, and produce diversification programs. We don't have that for the working lands.
That was the word that I wondered if we should add, those two words, working lands, because I definitely heard like Hanson, Secretary Tibbetts say we value agriculture and working lands. Like having you say that, like Champlain Citizens Advisory, that would help us.
Yeah, just a
wonder if we
blanket
could
statement.
or no, right? Even at the end, water quality goals and working lands. Additional state and federal support to agricultural producers is needed to continue to support a vibrant local food system and reach climate and water quality goals on working lands.
Okay, yeah.
I have to.
I can't.
I'm so in my role of VCRD, we support the Working Lands Coalition, which I don't think will conflict, but just FYI, I don't think it's just I think we're going to hire. It's a coalition of organizations. I think VNRC is actually part of it. Karina. And basically, we're advocating for the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, which is the funding that goes to farmers to help them diversify their food production.
But if we're just
actually farms and forest, sorry. What?
Well, I feel like saying working lands in this way isn't referring to that program necessarily. It's
No,
just
it's not. Right, it's just saying,
saying working lands, or we could say working landscape.
I think land, agriculture and working landscape.
Yeah,
On working lands.
I think working lands is
Yeah.
okay there, but
Yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts there? Should we go to develop land use?
It's maybe just, I don't know. I don't know if we, like, the language is pretty strong in the one above, the state must continue. It's just a little less strong in this one, so maybe just something to think about as we get more information. I don't know what the timeline is for like when this is going to print. I
This-
know we're trying to not have outstanding language issues.
Additional state and federal funding is integral or essential to agricultural is required, needed, or is additional state and federal funding must be provided?
Would it be helpful to have like a call out box with the oversubscribed programs if we have the information to say, you know, this number of grant applications and this much funding, and this is showing how oversubscribed they were and being specific about what the programs are, and like a call out box or something? Just a thought.
Makes sense to me.
I agree.
I just wanted to provide some feedback on this section. I don't know if I have the right to, because I've been absent probably, and I don't want to, but I'm very surprised. And if we're talking about flood mitigation resiliency, we don't have anything in here specific to public infrastructure. You know, we can't continue to lose bridges, roads, drinking water systems. I mean, a lot of stuff doesn't comply with current codes and standards. And, you know, a year ago we had, well, even back in July with the July flood in Plainfield, you get raw sewage going into the tributaries of the lake. And, you know, a year past that, we had treatment plants that were non-functional for 4 weeks. And not that all these things aren't helpful and important as part of the solution here, but I mean, we really don't identify or recognize any kind of need for public infrastructure. And the way FEMA looks at this is kind of bringing this stuff up to current codes and standards, you know, relative to the new kind of flood levels and criteria that we're, you know, seeing over the last couple of years with some of these recent events. But
We talk about failing municipal systems, which I think is specific to wastewater, but I don't know if we could expand on that sentiment there or add a sentence in that
yeah,
vicinity.
but I don't think it's even as specific, Hillary. I mean, it's bridges, it's roadway infrastructure, it's, you know, it's all above. It's stormwater infrastructure, it's you know, it's public infrastructure.
Are you thinking like a first sentence?
You want a paragraph, Wayne?
I don't know. I said for various reasons, I've been kind of absent. I'm not trying to, you know, you guys have all put a lot of work into this, but I mean, I think that's a pretty important category. if we're really serious about flood resiliency is really protecting existing infrastructure, bring that up to current codes and standards. That's where we need to kind of put some emphasis moving forward. But I'll leave it at that, I guess, at this point.
I welcome edits on that sentence, Wayne.
I'd like to current standards and I think we actually have to call out like public infrastructure. And I mean, I know you say, but bridges, roadways. Because
We mentioned culverts up above, but it's not just culverts, it's, stormwater. I mean, because what we're really seeing with a lot of this stuff over the last year and a half is the baseline, or what we've been working with for several years is really, exceeded and changed pretty significantly. So stuff that even built 5 or 10 years ago isn't even complying really adequate for some of these storm events that we're seeing.
I was just looking back on Allison's comment because I think it touches some on what you're saying, Wayne, and I think it's an important point. But some of the language she used was nice. Improving our infrastructure improving our public infrastructure to withstand future flooding by strengthening building codes, right sizing culverts, improving road drainage, preventing building in the floodplain. But I think your sentence, Katie, works really well too.
Because we're finding, even as you guys well know, like a lot of the FEMA flood mapping is so outdated and inapplicable when we're comparing it to what we've been seeing, for some of these recent events in the last 3 or 4 events. So the terminology, I guess, just for everybody's with FEMA, is it basically bringing it up to current codes and standards? Not necessarily we need to increase or improve the current, but basically bringing it up to current codes and standards. That means a lot of different things.
actual infrastructure needs to just at this point be at least brought up to the current infrastructures, maybe not current codes.
Yeah. And understanding that changes as we move forward because of what we're seeing with some of the flood levels in some of these communities and specific locations. So that's a little bit of a moving target moving forward.
You know what they get in North Carolina, 30 inches of rain.
This is a little bit of a monster sentence now,
It's
so
getting a little because down
there's a
below
lot of
Katie,
ands.
we also say to counter these threats. So almost, I wonder if we could leave it how we started this paragraph and then put the sentence that you just started drafting into the last piece
Okay,
to
yeah,
counter these threats.
But I think there's kind of two separate issues here. Unfortunately, a lot of this infrastructure is within these locations already. So it's either you've got to, improve it where it is, or you've got to relocate it. Obviously, that's a significant cost. So, I mean, the two parts of this, we obviously want to limit new construction and development in these areas. But we have a lot of infrastructure and things that are already in these areas that, we need to, improve so they're more resilient and mitigated.
So would you say, put that sentence back and then something like, in addition to
I know.
something about existing infrastructure? The next sentence, which was about working with new like keeping new infrastructure out of the floodplain. That sentence that was there. Sorry, this is a real insight to my brain right now.
Doing great. This is so challenging.
Yeah, well, there's just a lot packed into that paragraph because totally agree. We shouldn't be building new construction in those areas, unfortunately, and we probably, in some cases, shouldn't be rebuilding stuff that's located in those areas. But also, some of it's going to stay just by default because it's not affordable or reasonable. So we need to do a better job of flood resiliency and protecting that.
Do you think we have to call out community there, or could we say, because it's not just at the community level that we want to support efforts to limit development in river corridors?
Are folks okay deleting that?
Yeah. There's a state support learning new construction or development in river corridors through regional planning commission as other partners. I just want to say this because I think this is a tension that I'm dealing with right now. Is the way that our state land use policy kind of works right now is that we want to build up our village centers and designated downtowns. And most of our village centers and designated downtowns are in.
Okay, do you know that?
Can you meet Lori? Lori, thanks. Are in or along rivers and floodplains. But the tension is that's what we want so that we don't overdevelop our working land so that we maintain this, beautiful green rolling landscape that are our working lands. I'm just naming there's a bit of a tension there, I think, in terms of how I'm not saying that we shouldn't say this, but I just think we have to notice that tension exists.
Do you think there's thought though in those communities that are in floodplains or at risk of flood, that those wouldn't be the best to build up, or do you think it's kind of a blanket? I know that changes to Act 250.
Yeah, I think different communities are addressing it differently. I mean, I don't know, Johnson's kind of got this thought right now of, wanting a grocery store downtown, which makes sense because people can walk to it. So they want to rebuild. I think Plainfield right now is thinking that they want to rebuild their downtown in a different place. and probably move one of the main roads that goes through Plainfield because it continuously is getting washed out. So I think it depends on the community, Hillary, to be totally honest. But I guess the question is the land use policy in the state of Vermont, the way that it's designed is to encourage growth centers in designated downtowns and village centers to keep the land, the landscape protected, to keep our working lands protected. So that we're not developing those.
Decreasing fragmentation and all those pieces.
Right. Thank you for the word. That's what I was thinking.
Sorry, that same sentence or that paragraph. I wonder about calling out the regional planning commissions and not anyone else in that work for river corridors.
I was kind of thinking that too. Like, I wonder if we could just take out that last clause.
Yeah,
If
and
we added other partners, but it seems
Yeah,
like that was not very descriptive.
No.
It's just new development or development in river corridors. And maybe it's not, I don't. The state support efforts limiting new construction or development in corridors, or is it redesigning, rethinking, redesigning, relocating?
Feels like that
it's
new act, from last year might have addressed some of this too, but I don't know much about that. We had talked about maybe having somebody visit the CAC to talk about that new. I don't even know if it's a rule at this point. Well, but there was the flood
Act 121.
riparian. Yeah.
And yes, there's now state statute that says we can no longer build in our river corridors, but in downtown designated areas, they're doing a mapping process now to define where we can develop in those downtown centers. So it's not just like no development anymore. It's where it no longer makes sense, but also if it does make sense, this is why it should. But we should have someone from, actually Lauren Oates from the Nature Conservancy would be really good at speaking to the river piece.
I added vulnerable in front of river corridors. Does that get at some of what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like it would be great to have Lauren talk to us before we testify, because I feel like this is all fresh in the legislators' minds and they might ask us for some feedback on that act.
Green.
I agree.
Because you almost want to add and say new construction or redevelopment, but the problem with that is we've got, for example, a lot of mobile home parks that are in regulatory floodways, and you get back to the whole housing density and affordable housing thing. There's a lot of complicated issues there.
We'll let this percolate in the back of our minds while we move through the rest of the document. We can come back for a final round of that one before we finish out. So develop solutions for contaminants, pollution. We reference the progress that's been made on neonicotinoids in certain PFAS compounds, but still recommend more work on those fronts. But really are focused in on the chloride pollution piece this year. Safe de-icing and winter road management best practices, because I feel like that came up a little bit in the conversation with Anson today. There are ways to reduce the application, but still be safe.
I have to switch to my phone, you guys. So I'm going to hang up and get back on, okay?
Okay.
In progress. Can someone say something?
Hi.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that was a really interesting conversation with the ag department today about chlorides. Anson had questions about it, which I thought was great. I don't think he understood the issue. And then the other question that was just on, litigation. If people don't put, what are we doing if people don't put salt down and somebody gets hurt, and the litigation of that, either with the applicator or the business because I think I've heard, and I think we've heard that chloride's mostly coming, or the amount, private applicators are the biggest issue with this, which are parking lots typically and driveways. And so the question was around the litigation around what would happen if people reduce the amount of salt that they're putting on parking lots and roadways.
Should we add that to say incentivize public and private applicators? I know we've said it's probably not as much the municipal side, but the HOAs and landscaping companies that are probably the biggest contributor.
Yeah, I think we should do both, because it is, there are certain municipalities that are really good and focused on reducing chloride, others not. And so I think we still want to include public as well there. And just, I saw the comments about that Julie had. I just want to note from LCC will be pushing this legislation pretty hard this session. And we do have, and we already have commitment from the certain legislative leaders to take it up. So it will be good to have the CAC weigh in on this.
For chloride, Lori?
Pardon? Yeah.
For chloride, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Seems like folks are feeling good about that one. Prioritize land use and development that reduces water quality impacts.
On this, can we just change rain to storm so it's more encompassing on that fourth line?
Any other suggestions or questions about this section?
Yeah, the only thing, Katie, a couple quick, I don't know if intensity and frequency, I don't know if frequency should be in there. I'm not sure where we're receiving more rainfall on an annual basis. It's the intensity of the events that's more of an issue. Because the annual rainfall totals are run pretty consistently. And then maybe that next sentence, maybe after stormwater and added stormwater runoff.
Isn't it the frequency of the intense storms though that we're seeing?
Yeah, that's actually probably a better way to word it. Yeah, that makes sense.
So increased frequency of intense storm events, is that what we're saying? Sorry, took me a long time to do that.
This one has a lot of meat to it. Like every sentence is a request, and I guess whoever's presenting this section. So it's, I don't know what I'm saying, just that it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot, but without a ton of supporting talking points also,
Right.
which would be a challenging
each-
spot to be.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I guess each point has a separate story, and so may need to be explained a little bit.
It seems like it needs to be fleshed out more. I think, just making, maybe we need some stats in here or some further justification. And I don't understand it. To me, the CAC encourages that sentence. That last clause, consistent regulatory enforcement, doesn't fit to me with the previous statements. Because you're asking for resources for farmers and woodland owners, but they're not going to be doing the regulatory enforcement.
I bet that was left from the last year's ag section.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Maybe, but
It's interesting because, of course, we're still kind of curious if that's going to happen or not, but maybe it doesn't go in this, section.
I agree we need consistent regulatory enforcement. I just don't think you're getting it through, I think it's separate from technical assistance for farmers and woodland owners.
Right. I'm wondering too, like the regulatory piece here, we're talking about things that fall probably under stormwater jurisdiction. So as we kind of flesh this out or think about what we're saying in the presentations, to be a little bit clear on like where are the gaps in this back up at like housing development must happen in tandem with effective mitigation efforts. So like I'm assuming if it's under a stormwater permit, that would happen, but you have a lot of rural development that doesn't fall under stormwater permits.
Should we get rid of
this one? I don't know why, but it feels a little repetitive to the stuff we've already stated.
we cut this section, we're back on 2 pages probably.
Well, shoot, we
Am I
could make these all talking points.
I kind of
Yeah,
agree. It's very repetitive. I think it used to be our ag enforcement section. But I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, it's not. It's basically working lands and developed lands, but we have 2 paragraphs that talk about this up above.
Yeah.
Is there anything from this paragraph that we want to add to the other 2 paragraphs and that we don't have in the upper paragraphs?
I think one of the points with this one though that we don't have anywhere else is the developed lands and the non-point source, you know, and the 3 acre and that kind of stuff. I think that's a pretty important piece from water quality. I'm not sure we have that addressed in any of the prior paragraphs. And I would say more of the concern is from the existing impervious or developed lands.
And I also like the last sentence about the flexibility for clean water funds.
Yeah, and we shouldn't have that anywhere else at this point, but we could probably add it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I think both of those could be added somewhere else.
Are people comfortable doing that?
I'm struggling with it only because I feel like it's like, I think the section's supposed to address water quality, and we address water quality as it relates to flood mitigation, but having water quality as a separate paragraph is powerful if we make the paragraph better.
I see what you're saying. How do other people feel? What do you all think? I mean, maybe this is, yeah, I see what you're saying. So this might be the place where you name that tension between working lands and, because it's all one paragraph, but it's more about water quality than it is about, but I mean, it just goes back to the whole premise of this thing that what we have to do for water quality is the same thing we have to do for flood mitigation, right?
Could the last sentence be the first sentence, so it's like really clear we're starting the paragraph focusing on clean water and water quality?
That makes more sense to me.
Because starting with working lands doesn't, which I'm not saying shouldn't be in here, but just makes it a little bit more confusing because you go back to thinking about the flooding.
But I think this was from somebody else's suggestion. Now I think this goes back to and I think the point I think they're trying to get across in this statement is the water quality from existing developed lands is kind of the low-hanging fruit here if we're trying to focus on water quality impacts in this paragraph. So we got a lot of stuff that doesn't meet current standards. It's needs a lot of work in the next 3 to 5 years with funding and other kind of technical resources.
Does that capture that piece, Wayne?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that first sentence, what about if we take resilience out of that? Because I think this section really is focusing on water quality. I mean, we talk about resilience mitigation in kind of the previous.
How about, yeah. To address water quality, to improve water quality and
Achieve.
resilient development.
That sentence initially had been talking about the clean water funds, like enhancement and formula grant, so they don't really do any development with those funds. So I guess just being careful if we're starting to get into other topics.
Yes,
Can we just say
take it out.
improve water quality? Keep it simple.
And just say water quality
Yeah,
or clean water, but water quality. If that's truly the focus of this. What's the sentence say above it? It says prioritize land use to reduce water quality impact that reduces water water quality impact. Okay.
We do have, I guess we'll just have to keep an eye on that 2 paragraphs above the developed lands paragraph, right? Yeah, developed land use, that those aren't too like parallel or too synonymous.
I wonder, just sorry, going back to the existing development, the second to last sentence in that paragraph says existing developments must be brought up to current standards and housing developments must happen in tandem. Couldn't we condense that to say development must be brought up to current standards and must happen in tandem?
A new development must happen in tandem?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, I agree. I think that should be new development. It would be any development, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you put existing back in the beginning then? Existing must be brought up and new development must happen in tandem.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I like that.
That's clear.
Yep.
You think then, do we need the last, what do you guys think about the last sentence, which is?
I mean, that's about the working lands, right? Regulatory, but it's about the regulatory enforcement. I think we keep that in there personally. Because this says land use development, so that includes ag and forestry. It's not just developed lands.
Right, it's farmers and woodland owners.
Right.
Like after we talked about development.
Yep.
I guess I'm wondering, do we want to add developers to that list, like for developers, farmers, and woodland owners, or is that? Okay, maybe that makes it so it's not all working lands, I don't know. I mean, people don't like that, you can take it out too. I didn't mean to.
No, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the developed lands piece up here. It gets back to our Venn diagram and most of these things almost being a circle. Because there is definitely some. Okay, but this is non-point source. That's what we determined the difference was.
I mean, I think it just goes back to, we're talking about climate resilience and water quality, which the solutions are the same, right? But this paragraph is really about calling out the solutions for water quality. Is that what you're saying, Katie, that some of that we're repeating ourselves?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like the failing wastewater facilities and septic systems are further stressed by intense rain events and threatened water quality. But that is connected to the intense rain events. So I think it makes, but this also talks about increased storm events. So it's,
but that is what's putting the stress on our systems, that is dumping more pollutants into the water, right? And that's, our systems weren't built for these types of rain events that are happening right now.
yeah, I think I think this is why in the past we've separated, well, I don't know if it's been separated. Look at
Ag and developed land have been separated.
Yeah, ag and developed land, but also, yeah, we've had natural and developed infrastructure together previously, but okay. If folks are okay with it, we can keep things where they are. I'm not sure that anyone else looking at this is going to pay that close attention as we are right now. So it's probably
Here's a thought, maybe this paragraph, because I mean, I know they're interconnected, but I think in the first we're really focused on flood resiliency mitigation.
Mhm.
But what about this paragraph? If we take out, this is particularly important in light of pollutant runoff from increased frequency. I mean, if we're talking about working lands and existing developed, I mean, that's everyday stuff. It's every time it rains. If there isn't any kind of treatment or whatever from the water quality, you know, it's the everyday stuff, I think, versus more the intense rains that we're really concerned about, the protection, mitigation, and the above stuff. So just a thought.
How do others feel about that? In our last 6 minutes together.
Because I look at that as kind of an existing condition that we need to address. It's been deficient. Stuff isn't built to current standards, regulatory requirements, and that's happens every rain event we get. There's some amount of surface runoff, whether it's from a, you know, ag farm or even a, you know, a parking lot.
Right. I think I'm good with that.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it a little less similar to the section above.
Yep, me too.
And then this last sentence still has consistent regulatory enforcement in it. I moved it to the front. I don't know if that makes it any better. If we want to take that piece out or
I think we leave it right now because we're not there yet, right? Like,
Yeah, I think it's important because even with these stormwater rules and wetlands and all of it, it does need to be consistent.
right. I mean, I think this was really addressing the ag A&R issue, and we, you know, even EPA has agreed with us, but we're not there yet. So I think I like the word consistent, and I think it gets our point across.
And now we're using it not just about ag, but for developers.
Right.
All
The
right.
last paragraph, I was just trying to figure out a way to add the word tributaries in again, because that's going back to public access, not just along the lake, but it's tributaries. But maybe just saying it above, we don't need to say it here.
No, we should say it again.
Oh, I guess I skipped aquatic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't we miss
sorry.
AIS?
Yeah. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
jump. I thought this paragraph actually was pretty strong.
One observation I found in the last couple of weeks is I'm up in Colchester Point, and I haven't seen the zebra mussels ever as bad as they were or have been in the past, which I found interesting on anything that's been underwater all summer.
It's interesting you say that, Wayne, because I've gotten a few calls about it and same kind of anecdotal information. And I've been trying to swim at a lot of public access areas there and around the lake. And I've found that, you know, definitely need water booties in many places. And things that I didn't remember, you know, in the past, as you know, then there certainly seems to be, in just anecdotally, an increased abundance of them.
Yeah, I was out at Burton this summer too, and same thing. I don't think I've ever noticed them, and they were all over the place out there this summer on the rocks.
Yeah.
We should have a zebra mussel person come in.
That's a good idea. So is everybody good with the AIS one, or there's any comments or changes there for us?
Do we want to say something like a new funding source possibly involving mandatory boat decal, just because Julie made a big point of talking about that, or just leave it the way it is because this, you know,
I think we should
is
add
what we've
that.
been asking for.
Was she supportive or not?
I think
She wasn't really.
She
Oh,
was
sorry.
not.
Go ahead. Evan.
Yeah, so with the decal, she talked about the administrative
Yeah.
burden outweighing the benefit. But what she was supportive of was related to the public access piece of having like a car sticker, habitat stamp, sort of soft requirement for folks who want to park at access areas, but don't want a fishing license.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And I think we should endeavor to get that stat ground truth, because I've heard pushback on that when this was first advanced well over a decade ago. That's part of the feedback was that it would be too administratively burdensome, and you know that would just, all the costs with the money you'd gain would be used to administer the program. And then I've recently heard pushback on that. I think we should just try and verify that. And I think the other part of that we want to speak to is, you know, motorized and non-motorized craft, you know, in terms of that impact too. I know there's a lot of concern by the people who, you know, you might have 6 kayaks. You tend to not have the same water quality impact as you do with a gas powered vessel. And so there needs to be, you know, some recognition of that as well, and not making it overly burdensome to people in order to afford it.
The second sentence, should we just say to expand water access for all and not be specific? Because I think we're not just talking about shoreline, we're really talking about anything. It could be an upstream tributary, river, shoreline. I mean, I think the goal is really to improve public water access, right?
Does that work for folks?
Yes, that works for me.
And I added lake and tributary in front of access here. Expanding lake and tributary access and outdoor education opportunities.
Can I ask a stupid question? Are tributary, is Lake Carmi considered a tributary? Lake George, or when you say tributary, is it just rivers? Karina?
It's everything connected to Lake Champlain watershed.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Thank you. I like that we're adding this, and I'm surprised we haven't had it before, to be totally honest.
We might have, but now that we have flexible page numbers, we can throw those extra words in.
That at one point, and
I mean, we could say wetlands too if we wanted to.
We got to reel it in somewhere, but no. So I know we're after 7. I do want to check in on next steps. We don't have a quorum right now to vote on this, which was the original plan, but there have been some timeline shifts anyway. We had talked about targeting mid-November for our release again, our public action plan presentation, and pairing that with an informative public presentation, and potentially doing the state of the lake as the focus for that. The Basin program staff who would present on the state of the lake have crazy November schedules that don't align with one another. So I am going to suggest that maybe we push that public launch into the 1st or 2nd week of December, if that seems all right for folks. And like, we'll still, I mean, it'll be out earlier than it was before last year. So I think that seems like a good timeline still, and would work better for our speakers' schedules. And so which would give us a little bit more time than if we wanted to vote on the final text at the next meeting.
could we do an email vote so that you guys can start designing it? I don't know what Elizabeth's schedule is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate huge changes to the text at this point. I think we made some minor adjustments, so I can ask Elizabeth to start formatting this, and I know there are a couple of stats that I need to gather. But I think, yeah, we can ask Elizabeth to start designing this and then send that out for review in its near final form.
Have we ever referenced the state of the lake report or provided like facts from it in our action plan?
We've used graphics from it since I've been here.
I kind of like that idea.
It also seems like we should have it when we do our presentations, and certainly distribute it. Think about distributing it to legislators.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so our next regularly scheduled meeting would fall on a holiday again. So do we want to meet the week before? That would be Monday, November 4th.
Yeah, I'd rather do it earlier than later, Katie.
Okay.
That helps us get this finalized earlier too.
Great. So I'll send a holdout for that, and hopefully that'll work for a quorum of members. And I'll make sure that's clear in the invitation.
Yeah. Oh, we had a quorum tonight, so.
Well,
okay.
yeah, just not for the end of the meeting. So
right.
This will be an earlier agenda item, of course. But thank you, everyone.
Katie, thank you for all your work on this. It's a lot. This is awesome. To draft a consensus document like this and to do it well.
And all the the sessions you had and organized, and the work with the secretaries. The meetings were so good.
You're really good.
Well, thank you all for participating. I just try to make spaces for you all to get your ideas out there, and I obviously don't want this to be a document that just reflects my ideas. So it's a lot stronger because of everyone's participation and contribution. So Wayne, I know you said earlier that you hadn't been participating, didn't know if you could add in a suggestion at this late stage, but you were here during the drafting. It was a perfect time to make that edit. So always appreciate everyone's perspectives and contributions. So thanks, everyone.
You're a great
Great job.
reflective listener, Katie. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Hard to hold that space. So thank you.
All right, folks, I don't want to keep you any longer. Have a great night.
You too.
Right.
Thank you. Good to
Bye.
see
Good night,
everyone. Bye.
everyone.